There's two main trends that he noticed, and I think that anyone who's working remotely will also see this in their own lives. One, the idea that one of the struggles that people dealt with was really trying to get their workplace to feel like a community, and video really did help with that in a way to connect with people, to see how people were doing, and in a way just to give insights into their own lives, even if it is for a snapshot. I think people who watch Cheddar do get to see a little bit of our apartments and a little of our decor, and it kind of helps people keep connected all the way from execs to lower level employees. And the second thing they did find was that people did think that they were more productive and more efficient when it came to using these virtual tools. So one workplace that they work with mentioned that, some of the sales reps were noticing that it was more efficient for them to do a video chat, and they could do more meetings in one day than having to fly individually to each office space and meet with those people in person. So the concept that you aren't as productive because you're working from home, it really isn't that true. And this is something I think that's going to last throughout the pandemic, as we saw business continue to keep going, even though we were all stuck at home.
Michelle, last year the same exec told you the future of work communications would be through video. Clearly he was right, as you pointed out. What is he predicting for 2021?
I did find this very interesting. So yes, last year we spoke, he said it was all going to be about video, and that boomed more than ever. This year, this 2021 year coming up, he thinks that we're all going to need a break from being always on. And that's something that I think a lot of people are also experiencing. He thinks that a lot of these workplace tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams, they're going to need to build in these aspects that allow people to actually turn off from that always on communication. It's especially important for workplaces that have international people. Let's say you have someone in Australia slacking someone from America. They're not always on the time zones. But when you get that immediate ping from a workplace messaging communication tool, you feel like you have to respond. And he thinks that workplaces need to be more cognizant of this. They need to be more, there needs to be tools that allow people to actually put time out to say that you're not active during the nighttime hours, to let people get back to messages in a couple hours that aren't as urgent. And that's something that really isn't put into a lot of these tools at this time. And he really thinks that companies will start developing that so we have more sense of work and remote time.
You mentioned Slack. We know Salesforce recently announced their acquisition of the company for nearly $28 billion. It has been criticized for being quite expensive. Michelle, do you think this deal makes sense given the fact that we are likely to head back to offices sometime next year?
Now, Salesforce is really in the enterprise business, and you know what? Slack is a way to communicate through remotely when you're not physically all in the same space. So I do actually think that the acquisition makes sense for Salesforce to buy this communications tool. Now, what it really does signify to the market, though, is that Salesforce is betting that we're actually not all going to return to the office anytime soon. And it seems that a lot of Americans might not actually want that regular 9 to 5. A recent Slack study actually showed that about a quarter of the workforce said that they felt they don't like that structured schedule. They like being able to work on their own hours and work remotely. They said they actually found they were more productive than if they had actually gone into the office, and they actually felt they had a better sense of community when they were able to communicate on these tools rather than actually being physically in the office at the same time, which I found fascinating. So there's not really this rush to actually bring everyone back to the office, since it did work in the workspace, and I think that's what Salesforce is betting on. Offices can save money on having to rent that actual real estate, and they can keep employees happy, so it might actually continue past the pandemic, even though we can return to the office safely if the vaccine is as widespread as they are predicting by the second half of the year.
Well, speaking of community, Michelle, we know Zoom and Google Meet, they might have started as work communications tools, but we've all used them to connect with friends and family during this year. Do you think that trend will stay, and will they offer more features to make it more conducive to social interactions?
I do think that we are going to do video chatting a little bit more in our own personal time, but I do think that we're going to scale back quite a bit. I don't know if you felt this, but I personally felt a lot of Zoom fatigue, just being on camera with family and friends all the time. And there's actually studies that support this. There's some research that shows that brain waves between adults and babies synchronize when they can lock on eye-to-eye contact in person. And when you do it over the camera, you don't get that personal interaction. So your brain's kind of trying to connect with the people but having a harder time because there's not that physical interaction. So I do think that as people can actually meet in person safely, we're going to scale back a little bit, but I think it's already started that it is acceptable to Zoom people, to Skype with people, and to connect with video chat more than ever, and it will continue past the pandemic.